in the zone to be. From a yin to my yang to my yang to Z. Put a grin on my chin when you come to me. Cause I'm weird, I'm a one of a kind, and I'll bring death to the place you're about to be. Another river of blood running under my feet. Forged in the fire lit long ago. Stand next to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me old. I fade on the fear of the devil inside of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a warrior, this is my song.
I am a warrior and this is my song. I'm basking the glow of the rising war. Lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore.
I read you, Lima Charlie, loud and clear.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of Lima Charlie, and excited to invite my good friend Will Bennett on our show tonight. I think, Will, you may be our first guy from the mighty United States Air Force. You may be our first, I think our first one. I have to go back and look, but only 9 episodes in.
That's a chair force.
Chair Force. Well, we're all sitting in nice, comfy chairs now, so ahead of the time. But welcome, Will. Thank you for joining us this evening and coming on here to Lima Charlie and kind of giving us some of your background and stories.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dude, you have a great voice for radio and a face for radio too, I must say. But definitely, man, you got a great. Have you ever done voiceovers or anything like that? You have a.
I did a little bit. Did some formal training in DC and did a promo and did some kind of stuff on the side. I really had a lot of fun doing it. Surprisingly so. Like it was great going there and get to play these characters. And I've been doing that for years, playing video games anyway with the guys, doing like weird voices and being just stupid. And like, I can make money doing this. This is awesome. So
yeah. Your next, they say people change careers 8-9 times in their life. That may be your next one.
I'm on number 12, so hopefully I'm done.
Well, some people just takes a while to figure out what they want to be when they grow up.
I'm still growing up.
There we go. But hey, well, like I said, you served in the Air Force, but didn't always necessarily we're gonna go that way and everything. So kind of give our listeners a little bit of background of who you are, why what service you went in, why you did, and kind of start. We'll go from there.
Yeah. So most people in my family, most of my family members served in some capacity. Not everybody, but most of them. So my grandfather and my great uncle were both in World War II. They were in the Navy. They were actually in Tokyo Bay during the signing of the treaty of the ceasefire. They were in a tender ship looking at the proceedings, right? So they weren't on the main boat, but they were right there, and I got pictures of them, and they both served together. It was there, I guess, during that program where they had the brothers in the Navy. They could go and serve on the same ship and kind of take the same path and channel all the way through. My uncle, my oldest uncle, my dad's side, he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. We talked about pre-show how he was flying UH-1s, and then he flew some of the first gunships where they attached guns to the UH-1, and then he was one of the first pilots to fly the Cobra in combat. And so, a lot of history there. I mean, he well decorated. He did some really pretty amazing stuff during his time in. And then my dad, he served in the Army as well. And he was actually a heavy equipment operator at Fort Riley, Kansas. He gave me lots of stories about the cold and the flatness of Kansas, him being a Florida boy, and that was his first time really out of the state for anything significant. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather, he served in the Army as well. He was during the Korean War period. He didn't deploy. He was stationed in California, but he was a tanker. And then so I actually joined the Army, and because it kind of was natural, like
yes, you did originally join the Army.
Yeah, I did. I joined the Army in the late entry program. I'd always knew I wanted to serve because my family had served, and it was something growing up. That's what you did. You served your country. It's part of doing your duty, and we're going to volunteer, and we're going to step up and toe the line. So when the plan was go to college, right? I'll take mom and dad have some money set aside for me, go to college, do ROTC, coming as an officer had always been the goal. And because I was going to serve, I wanted to serve with a bar on my hat, and make a little more money. And I like being in charge sometimes. So kind of thought that'd make sense. And then kind of got, typical teenager stuff, started fighting with my dad and headbutting, got big for my britches. I'm ready to be a man and do my own thing. I wanted to get out and do me. So I said, screw that. I'm not going to take their money. I'm going to go ahead and join. So in my junior year, between junior and senior year in summer, I went and joined the late entry program with the Army. And, I was going to go and do a couple different things. I thought about doing like a 2-year stint. When I was getting it, it was 95. So in 1994, they had some programs with like this critically manned career fields. You could go in for like 2 years and get like 20 grand for college. So, I mean, it was an up program for the GI Bill. So you got your GI Bill and you got the extra 20 grand. So I'm like, well, I'll go 2 years, make that money, go ahead and bounce out and go get my degree and then come back in as an officer. That's what I always wanted. It wasn't ever a get out and stay out. It was a get out, come back in. And so joined that and got up to MEPS, kind of typical thing. Hey, I know you brought you up here to be a command and control systems operator analyst, and that's a 2-year stint, but we're all out of those billets. So here's a 3-year stint for you being a light wheel vehicle mechanic. And of course, me, little dumb 17-year-old, I'm going, well, I spent all day at MEPS and I've already invested this time. Why not? And it's more money for college, and it's only 3 years versus 2 years. And to ask the question, hey, can I go to college when I'm on duty? Oh, of course you can. Yeah, absolutely. You have plenty of time to do that. Light wheel vehicle operator or mechanics, they're going to be in garrison. Where do you think the vehicles are? Right. And maybe not anything. Well, sure. All right. Well, hey, let's do this. Let's sign up. It's $30,000 for college plus the GI Bill. And I did the math. I'm like, well, this gets me where I want to go. So joined up. I was an ROTC, junior ROTC in high school. It was I was one of the founding flights, so it just started my junior year, and so I was doing stuff there. And I'd always been kind of super troop, kind of overachieve, trying to make everybody happy, kind of stuff. So I was one of those annoying people. And but I went out and I set up like tours and things to go to different bases. So I did a Tyndall Air Force Base one. Not Tyndall, Eglin. We did Eglin Air Force Base, saw the spec ops group there, did a bunch of cool stuff at Eglin. I worked and set up another one with the Navy going up to Jacksonville. We did NAS Jacksonville, Cecil Field, Kingsport or Kings Bay, the naval sub base there. So we got to see some real cool stuff. And well, while we were doing that, we went to Patrick Air Force Base was one of those. And there happened to be an airborne group there. I think it was 82nd Airborne. They were doing a practice jump. I don't know why they were at Patrick, but they were. And there was I think it was the first sergeant. And walked up to him and I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? Hey, I joined the Army. I'm going to be shipping out after high school here. And he goes, oh, cool. What you going to be? I said, well, light wheel vehicle mechanic. He goes, oh, that's awesome. The airborne needs those. I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I thought it'd be airborne. He says, yeah, you'll be in the field all the time. I was like, really? All the time? He says, oh, yeah. Well, where do you think the vehicles are? We go to the field. We need vehicle mechanics in the field. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of damn sense. Ain't what I was told. So then I come back. And I'll go, well, maybe I made the wrong decision. Maybe I need to go do something different. So it actually created a huge kerfluffle with the local recruiting battalion. I had the commander of the recruiting battalion come in, thinking ROTC, it was the Air Force ROTC, was pushing me to the Air Force. And of course, me being a little smart ass that I was, I'm like, I was 17, not 18. You can't hold me to it, blah, blah, blah. They let me loose of it. And I had immediately went and got into the Air Force. So went and did that, signed up, had 4-year commitment instead of 2 or 3, no additional college stuff, but it's kind of where I wanted to go from the get-go. I chose the Army mostly because of dad and the family and the college piece. It was never a question of if I was serving, it was the question of where, which branch. Right. Never really went to the Marines. My dad, typical rivalry stuff. Didn't want, I don't know, son of mine's going to the Marines, that kind of, they didn't want me to cop. Couple of little things, and I was trying to make my dad happy and make him proud of me. And so I joined the Air Force. I got in, I was supposed to be a crew chief on an F-117, right? At that time, top technology. I'm like, this is awesome. I love aircraft. My dad and we used to always watch Wings. I don't even remember that from the Discovery Channel back in the day. I knew so much about aircraft. We've been to air shows constantly. I could tell you every single aircraft that was in active inventory and most aircraft that have been retired and almost every aircraft that was active in World War II. I love military history. So I was really into aviation. So I was like, well, this is a pretty good fit. Let me go there and do mechanical stuff. I love working on things, fixing stuff. So nice fit. Got into basic training, did all this 1995. I left 4 days after graduation because I knew if I hung out at home, I had these 2 friends who were twins. My boat
in trouble.
Oh yeah.
In trouble. Yeah.
I kept myself really clean cut for the most part. Couple little things in high school where I drank a little bit or went to some parties and did some stuff. For the most part, though, I was a good kid. Like I was worried my dad was going to stomp a hole in my ass, so I had to kind of watch out. I knew that if I hung out there and I had nothing else to do, I was going to be going out with these guys. We were running the streets, going out and partying and doing stuff, and I was probably going to do something stupid. So I bounced, and I got in, joined. It was like literally 6 days later, I was processing, or 4 days later, I was processing and flying up to San Antonio. Did basic training, did all that stuff, and we were in, I think, week 5, and we did the hearing test. Well, I grew up a little redneck in Central Florida, a country boy. We were shooting all the time, no hearing protection, running heavy equipment, firecrackers blowing up next to ears and stuff as we threw them at each other, stupid stuff. So apparently I'd lost some hearing. I think it was my right ear. I'd lost hearing at a specific range, and they disqualified me from working on the flight line. And this was in week 5. So again, young 18-year-old, well, I've done all this in basic training. It's been 5 weeks. I don't want to just throw this away. So they gave me a list to choose from. And they said, all right, pick any job off this, put your 10 on here, and we're going to give you, we'll find something to put you in. The very last job that I put on there was weather. And I was like, well, weather, yeah, well, I don't know. It was kind of interesting. I liked it in earth sciences. It was kind of sciencey, whatever. I'll throw it on there. Little did I know it was a critically manned career field. And they're like, oh, this guy wants weather. Boom, he's in. So they switched me over to being a weather forecaster or a weather technician. I had no clue really what that meant from a military perspective. So I was just kind of walking in blind.
You would think that means not going to the field, though. I would think that means you're going to be back in the rear.
Yeah, you at the base, right? Because especially as Air Force. And it wasn't that I was opposed to deploying. I wanted to go travel and do stuff. Hell, in basic training, I was going to try out for the special forces. So they have in Air Force, there's one, you get a couple days. I think it's 1 or 2 days they pick, and you can go try out for PJs and pararescue and combat control. I was in great shape, and I'd already practiced the test. I was getting ready for it. I wanted to do that kind of stuff. I got the worst case of bronchitis I think I've ever had in my life in I think it was week 3 of basic training. They did a pulse ox. I think I was running like 83% or something. And I was not functioning very well, and I missed my window. So then I had to go into a traditional path, and I was going to try to get back into like a jump school or something else. Because once I found out I was in weather, we have weather had a thing called paraweather. So we go and we jump. We have Gray Berets, and they jump with the airborne units, and they provide all of the weather support for all of the active airborne units. And that's your standard airborne. And then we have a special operations support group that also does spec ops weather support in the field and in the forward deployed bases. And so the FOBs. So I'm like, that's right up my alley. That's what I want to do. So got into observer school, did good there. Everything was going along pretty well. And then I got orders to England, and I always wanted to leave the States. So then me going, man, I joined the military to travel. I want to get out of Florida, get out of the little small town I was in. I'll do the paraweather later. So I went ahead and skipped it and went to England. Spent a couple years in England, cut my teeth, realized that my big oversized personality doesn't necessarily fit in the military at times. And I had to learn how to kind of adapt that back in. I got shaped pretty aggressively in my second year, if you will. I had an interesting supervisor that did not understand me at all. He, quick story on that. I came from a military family. I'm yes sir, no sir to my dad. To this day, my dad was here yesterday for Easter. Yes sir, no sir. That's how it is. Anybody that's my elder, I speak yes or no sir. Even people my own age sometimes. So I get out of basic, out of tech school. I'm at my first base, and I meet my first supervisor, and he's like, hey, you can call me Jeff. And I looked at him, and I had this really confused look on my face. I'm like, I can't do that, Sergeant Lovejoy. And he goes, what do you mean you can't do that? I said, well, you're a sergeant. I'm an airman. I can't call you Jeff. He goes, well, it's just us. I said, I can't do that. Like, I got all locked up. I was vapor locked. And he thought I was just the biggest pompous prick, and I was trying to like correct him, right? So he definitely worked on shaping me that year, and taught me what not to do as a supervisor.
Yeah, I mean, we see that in the Army and in aviation and in the helo units. I mean, they're all very first name, and the joke is always around the Air Force is always that, right? You'll have a captain and an E4 or whatever.
Yeah,
Bob and Sam and this and that. It was always a joke when I was in the Army around Air Force units. It was like everyone's just buddy buddy, and obviously in the Army side, much less an airborne unit, which I was in a lot of that time. You're locking up.
Yeah.
It's hard to call someone by a first name, even if they're a peer.
Yeah.
We're all that people.
The only people I ever in my career called by first name was people that I became personal friends with, or
Right.
like I was around, or we'd go hang out socially outside of work. Because I'm not going to be out at Chili's or something saying, "Hey, Sergeant Snuffy," no, it's Bob or whatever. Unless they're my superior, then it's different. And it was definitely an eye opener because there was also such a wide difference. So I was expecting more of that discipline that everybody's doing this. In the Air Force, there was a lot of variation at that time. So we had some people that were real hardcore, like, hey, we're going to be formal, we're doing the thing, and I was good with that. Then you had other people that would be real kind of loosey goosey, and so in Mildenhall, it was Mildenhall, England, my first duty assignment. That's where I had my first deployment. I wound up going to San Vito, Italy, and that was a special operations task force support. That was the weirdest deployment I've ever been on because we were in this old abandoned base in Brindisi, Italy. So San Vito dei Normanni. It was an old listening post. It was a Cold War, it had like the elephant cage for the signals intel, and it had a solar observatory there, which I thought was pretty interesting. I always wanted to see the solar stuff because we would sometimes get tasked for that stuff. So get there, I'm an observer. We're on the Brindisi airfield. We're with Italians, and we had a 1982 or 86 like suitcase phone. So it had this big thing we had to carry around with a handle. It had a cord on it and an antenna that was probably about 4 foot long. And that's how we had to call in our weather observations and all our data from the Italian airfield. We had to carry this stupid cell phone thing around it, and how did it even work? We spoke zero Italian. They didn't give us any support. We're working with our Italian counterparts who spoke zero English.
No terps of any kind, and then
No, nothing. We're just like, I got me, this was back before the internet was widely available. So I got an Italian to English book, and I'm like looking stuff up, trying to figure out what's this guy telling me about.
it sounded like Glorious Bastards. You probably like Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Yeah, it was something. I did learn how to order drinks real quick. I learned how to talk to girls because they'd have some Italian girls come to the club, the MWR club, and I learned how to order sandwiches and food and stuff. So I could get around pretty good. And I got, though, after probably the third month, I got to where I could talk pretty good. Like I could spit some game. I started getting some girlfriends. I was enjoying my time.
You were doing immersive language training.
It was definitely immersive in several ways. So it was an interesting time. And the weirdest thing that happened there, and also probably one of my cooler stories. Do you remember when there was the Albanian exodus and they had the big refugee crisis? It was the first time I think Italy had been in command of like a NATO operation. And that was where they were helping the recovery efforts and picking up the folks as they were coming across. Well, there was also helicopters coming in constantly. So it'd be like CH-47s or the Italian version. They had some other kind of thing. I can't remember what it was called. They'd go and they'd pick up a load of refugees coming off the docks in Albania, fly across the Adriatic, and they'd land at the airfield. And they had the Carabinieri. So that's the Italian state police, right? And they were sitting there and they had their billy clubs, they had MP5s, and they're sitting there at the back of the aircraft. And there'd be like 50 some people come off this CH-47 deal. And as they're going, there's a Carabinieri commander and he's pointing at it. And this was maybe 300 yards from where I was working. I'm watching them the whole time. And they point at somebody. And all of a sudden, all the Carabinieri jump over and beat the mess out of them with billy clubs and butt stroke them with the damn MP5s. And then they throw them in a paddy wagon. And then they get back in line. Next. And they did this all day long. It was crazy. So while I'm sitting there, we're watching this. Suddenly, this Hind comes blowing through. So, it's a gunship. And it's just this low level. It's probably 50 foot. This dude went all the way across the Adriatic. He comes into the airfield unannounced. Everybody starts freaking out. Cops are moving crazy. Carabinieri is doing stuff. They're loading these people up into the thing and getting them out of the way. And this guy tucks and he takes and lands. And he just lands. He's probably, 400 yards from me. I can see the guy, the pilot, in the cockpit. And I see him looking around, and the helicopter's just sitting there. And it's a full-on gunship, and it's loaded. All of a sudden, all these cops and stuff come around, and they all surround this guy, and they put the guns right on him. And they got him surrounded in a circle. And he just kind of looks around like this, and you see his arm do this number. He pulled up on the collective. He takes off, moves over, sits back down. All the cops stop and look at each other. They kind of look around like, what do we do? They all hop in their cars. There's a clown car show, and they surround him again. They got him surrounded again. Dude looks around. He just takes off and moves over, and all of them stop, and then he just kind of turned towards him. Turns out the guy was defecting. So watch this guy.
What were the country markings on the bird?
Oh, it was Bosnian.
Oh, it was Bosnia.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, it was Albanian. It was an Albanian.
Oh, he took the bird and defected.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out. I'm done with this. And just freaking right there. Man, I never forget. He just, just pick up, over, and set back down.
And if anyone's ever seen a hind, you would see it's like a flying battleship.
Yeah.
It is so big. It is so loud. I mean, it is not like a dainty, fast, speedy kind of.
No.
It is like it's like put big guns on something the size of a CH-47 or CH-53 and just fly it around. Yeah.
And the CH-47s, you had a real distinct sound, with a double rotor. And these things are coming in and out. And all of a sudden, this thing's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It just had that weird kind of. I think it's like an 8-blade or 6-blade rotor. It's big. It has a very distinct sound. Yeah. It was pretty wild. And so that was interesting. That was my first deployment. I did fly over on one flight. I went into Bosnia. I went to Herzegovina and Tuzla. Yeah, I think it was Tuzla. So we flew into both of those places. I was on an MC-130, the refueler, the Shadow. I got to do some really cool stuff with the Spec Ops guys that were there. I went and did like a night drop on the Adriatic where we were doing training and practice. So I went out on the safety boat and they were all jumping out. And we were doing stuff. I got to do live fire exercises on the beach. We did like a boat assault simulation, beach assault simulation.
Did you support like 24th STS and that kind of stuff?
No, it wasn't them. So it was like elements. So we'd have like a small element of force recon that would be there. They'd come through. They'd only be there like a couple of weeks, they'd be gone. We had SEAL teams that would rotate in and out. And mostly it was Pararescue Combat Controller as the kind of the full time. And they were all coming out of 325 or 325th Operations Support Squadron Operations Group, Special Operations Group in Mildenhall. I don't think they're even there anymore, but that was the main folks that were supporting that. Then the PJs would go into to Kosovo and Bosnia and Albania, and they were extracted people. Like we did Pope support there. I had to work, I think, 72 hours one day because we hadn't anybody else on shift. I just lived at the Ross for 3 days, the remote observation site, because we had AC-130s going over and doing cap for the Pope when they were going into Bosnia. So that was my first real my combat tour, but it wasn't combat, right? I mean, we got locked on with some surface to air missiles and stuff. We were coming in, but it was just a flight. It wasn't nothing. It was in Italy. It was nice. So we lived in base housing, and you're talking about some of the special forces guys and how they live so nice. The spooky guys, we lived in the old base housing at San Vito. So it was family housing. I think it was like 3-bedroom with had a downstairs living room, little kitchenette. We're all living up. We're shacked up in there. There's like 8 of us in a house or something, but it's our own house. It was nice. Well, these guys, they took and converted the downstairs and they built a bar, and it was a pay-as-you-go bar, donation only because you can't charge. And but if you didn't donate, you didn't get served. So take it as you will. They had this whole thing, and it was the place to hang out.
Yeah, it was built on honor system. That would only work in the Air Force. The Army would be like, "Hey, where did all the booze go?"
Well, they had somebody manning the thing. Yeah, it wasn't like you couldn't serve yourself. They had it, but the spooky bar would be open. We did all kinds of cool stuff. Had great times, great parties, and I think that was my first time getting that full sense of camaraderie. Where, and actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up just a little bit. One of the reasons I joined the Air Force, there was a guy in Air Force Times. He was a tech sergeant when he was on it. He was a PJ, and I think he was at Fort Benning, and they were doing a drop, and an Army guy went through his chute. So the Army guy had a late deployment, and they were doing airfoil. So I think was there 7 cells in the airfoil, something like that.
Something like that.
They basically everything on the right side was collapsed, and there was 2 cells on the left side. And he was spinning all the way down. He hits the ground. I think this was 1993. He hits the ground, breaks every major bone in his body. The only reason he lived was the Army corpsman was over there. Medic comes over and does emergency tracheotomy on him, got him where he could breathe. So he takes in, go get better. They do all these surgeries. They're going med board him. He's getting kicked out. And he says, I want to stay in. They said, well, you're going to have to do all this, this, and this. He says, all right, let's do it. The dude did it. And they said, well, you can't do special forces anymore. He says, we're still doing this. He says, well, no, you got to pass this, this, and this. He says, okay. The guy did it. He made it through everything after having basically his entire body just crushed. And I'm sitting there in the PX in San Vito. And I'm just getting like some snacks or something, about to go out and go to work. And I felt this guy, you know how like some people, you just get a feel like they walk by and you go, they got like an energy. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of tell like, oh, this person's hard. This person, I ain't gonna worry about him. I had this feeling, and I looked over, and I was like, this is the hardest dude I've ever met in my life. Like he looked like the physical embodiment of concrete. Like he was just like, he was tough. And then I recognized, was like, holy crap. I said, are you tech sergeant? He was master sergeant then. He says, yeah. I said, wow, man. I said, you're one of the main reasons I joined the Air Force versus the other services. I read your story in Air Force Times, and your fight back. And actually, you're the reason I wanted to join the pararescue and combat controllers. And I was, I told him about trying out in basic and getting sick and all. He says, well, why don't you come work out with us? And so that's what got me in with these guys. And I went out, and man, we had some Navy SEALs with us, a bunch of young combat controller pararescue guys. I think I was 20 at the time, 19. All these guys in the early 20s. This dude's like 30 something and just busted up, right, and come back.
Right.
He PT'd us all so hard, like everybody was having muscle failure. We're doing push-ups and we're falling on our faces. And I'm thinking I'm doing good, man. I'm like keeping up with these guys. I'm like, shit, look at this. I come in drinking beer from England and partying
with SEALs and PJs, right?
Yeah, I'm like, man, this is awesome. So we get done, and I'm like, oh my God, like my legs are shaking. I got rubbery arms. I'm like, whoo, this is something. But I kept up with them. But other guys were having similar actions. I'm feeling pretty good. He goes, all right, that was a good warm up. Let's go run to the beach and back. We're going to do it again. I'm like, what? The beach was 15 miles away. At that point, I realized I ain't ready for this. I got to go to work. So I begged out, and I wussed. I threw the towel. So I'm sorry. I appreciate it. I got to go to work. But I did go hang out, and I did other workouts with them and other things. That's where I did the beach assaults and all that. And that was cool. I loved that assignment. That was fantastic.
Yeah, 30-mile run to and from the beach, 15 each way. That'll make you have to check on a low pressure system. It's like you go look at the Doppler radar. Make sure
I got some weather issues I got to go address. So and then came back to the States, went to forecasting school, and then I had my first Army assignment. So I did 12 years in total, and 6 of that was with the Army. So I got to Fort Hood, and here's the crazy thing: I picked that assignment, and it was because my wife at the time, my now ex-wife, I wanted to go to PJ school again, or not PJ, combat controller or combat weather school again. I wanted to go to jump school, and I had the guy. I was selected. I made it through all the stuff I needed to, and I was going to go. And then my now ex-wife was like, you should probably try Army support before you go all in like you're going to. I was like, no, I want this. And she talked me out of it. So I had the #1 score in my tech school, so I got to pick my assignment. And the one nobody wanted was Fort Hood, Texas. And I'm like, I'll go. They're like, you're using your selection for Fort Hood? It's like, yeah, I want to go out there and learn new stuff. Plus, I also saw that Fort Hood was doing the digital division fielding. They were doing the rest of the proof of concept in the field trial. So the initial field trials was 10th Mountain Division. And so you had all this new technology coming out in the field. I'm like, man, that is so cool. I want to be part of that. So got to Fort Hood, was doing airfield services support, was attached to 1st Cavalry Division at first, a couple field X's there, kind of got my feet wet and cut my teeth on Army support. And then I was transferred over to 4th Infantry Division. So as they were starting the major OPEX series and schedule to get all the Force 21 initiative stuff out. And man, I was so fortunate to be in that situation because I got the best of both worlds. I got the awesomeness of Air Force living and being taken care of real good, because some of the Army folks didn't, in my opinion, get taken care of the best. But then I got to be operational and really focused on the important stuff when I was doing the Army field exercise or deploying with them. I deployed to Kosovo, 15th Military Intelligence Brigade. So I got to do some cool stuff there. And because I was an Army, I didn't have to deal with the dumb stuff in the Army for the most part.
Right.
And because I wasn't on an Air Force base, I didn't have to deal with the bureaucracy of the Air Force stuff. And so I could do more things than my rank.
Yeah, you're an anomaly when you're in Air Force. From the Army standpoint, like Air Force guy, I don't know, whatever. They talk each other by first name and just like they're different. They got long hair. We can't make them do anything. Yeah, it was just like.
Well, for us, I didn't run my teams that way though. When I got to my unit with 4th Infantry, we had a ready line of like 20%. Because we got all the crap vehicles from the motor pool. They were like, that's Air Force, give them the junk. They ain't going to run them right anyway. So we had a IMETS Humvee, so it had a shelter half on it, and then we had an Expando van 5-ton that didn't work. Like none of it worked. And we had all these other Humvees with all these different issues. My grandfather was a master mechanic. I grew up in his garage. My uncle, my dad, we all did red deck engineering, building swamp buggies and stuff. I'm mechanical. So I told my sergeant, I was like, hey, let me go in here and fix this stuff. He's like, well, go for it. Let's see what you got. You got 6 weeks. And I took us from a 20% to an 80% and then got us on a schedule because I learned how to get along with a motor pool sergeant. So I brought beer. I brought snacks. I took and went and said, hey, I know your guys are busy. Where's the parts? I'll fix it. So I got in there and started turning a wrench, and so they're not used to an
Air Force
airport.
guys are willing to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably
so I'm getting dirty. Absolutely. So I started horse trading. I was doing all kinds of stuff, man. And I got my stuff running. We never had an HVAC system for a 5-ton. So I snagged a shelter half from a Humvee system that was kind of sitting off in a corner, and I shoved it in the hole and I put like foam stuff in, and I rednecked the mess out of that thing to get it to work. Wired it in. Man, we had air conditioning, we had heat. We were living high style. So it was cool because then I actually, my vehicle had my name on it still, was in front of Baghdad International Airport during the initial invasion. Right. So the 4th ID, I think, was hung up in Turkey for a while. When they were finally released, they come in and they took over Baghdad. There's a picture of one of the Humvees, got my name on it because it was my vehicle. But it was right after I deployed to Korea, so I didn't get to deploy my unit. And that was my first time feeling real disappointment for not going to war with my team, my group, my people that had trained so hard to do that mission. That
so had
was
you PCS to Korea, or you went like a special assignment and then they deployed?
2-year PCS. Yeah, they PCS'd me out right before the Iraq War started.
Wow, so that's why I went to Iraq with 4th ID.
Oh wow.
That's what I figured. I thought you did. I thought you went in with them on 4th ID.
I was there the second time I was there. 4th ID was there. So
Okay.
I was there. So when I went was 2006, and I was at Tyndall Air Force Base. So I went on an Air Force assignment, not an Army assignment. I was that weird dude that was like, hey, how do I get transferred over to 4ID? Oh, I need to do a year? No problem. Sign me up. I want to deploy with my former team, because some of the people I knew were still there. And I wanted that type of deployment. I didn't want an Air Force deployment. I was a weird guy. I didn't really fit in with some of that stuff, Air Force wise.
No wonder you hang around a whole bunch of us like you do.
Yeah. I mean, I was that guy that, like, I always had my weapon with me no matter what. I was deployed, weapons with me. It's, I'm doing like the Army, because I don't trust the MPs to take care of me all the time. That's but the Air Force guys, what they did when they showed up to Iraq, man, they went in there, they just took their weapons and put them in the armory. Like, like there's a fence there. People outside that fence don't like us very much. And while I was there, there was I think it happened 3 times. There was potential incursion, but one time 4 guys just disappeared in the airport. They locked everything down. They had dogs searching the tower. They had stuff going crazy trying to find these four guys. And suddenly all the people around me were getting all nervous. And I'm like, same as I was yesterday. I got my pistol right here. I'm good to go. And then so we're like, well, why don't you want your M16? I said, look, we're so far inside this base. They got to get through 3 layers of defense plus a QRT that's going to come over. If we're having a situation where I need an M16, there's going to be one lying around somewhere. I'm not too worried about that. And but it was interesting. I'd say Iraq, for us in support role, it was more the indirect fire. We weren't door kickers, we weren't out there and stuff. But for me, when I knew I was getting shot at, it honestly didn't bother me a whole lot. It was like afterwards I kind of think about it, but it was an intellectual exercise, because it was like I knew I was going outside the wire. I knew there was a situation, there was possibilities, and you kind of process a little bit. For me, it worked that way. And then we were getting shot at. It wasn't like in a combat environment where you're in a street or in that kind of point to point. We're in an aircraft. It's kind of impersonal. They're shooting at an airplane and they're kind of walking them to you, or we're a helicopter. And it just didn't. I don't know. It didn't bother me. What messed me up was when I was sitting there and I was comfortable. I kind of let the walls down. We had a crew of people that come through, and we had a TV that we kept passing from person to person. And we were stealing power out of the junction box. And we had an Xbox, so I brought my Xbox. So I'd sit there, and I had a lawn chair that I'd bought. I had like a rattan kind of mat to let the sand and stuff fall through, a little carpet over top of that. I'd get in some civvies, some shorts, and just a t-shirt like I was hanging out at home. I'd sit back and I'd start playing Grand Theft Auto, and I'm just doing something to pass the time before I go to sleep. Right. And then all of a sudden that rocket would come in, or the mortar would hit, and everything would shake, and the TV would skitter across the table, and your guts go kind of, how it feels. And all of a sudden you go from, hey, I'm chill playing to, well, ain't nothing else coming. Let's go back to playing. It was like 0 to 0 like that. And at the end of my time there, my son actually ran away from home. So it was my last month in Iraq, and I'm getting ready to redeploy, doing the stuff. Got my new person coming in. I'm training them up, and then I got a call from my wife, or my ex-wife now. You can't find your son. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find my son? He went to school this morning and he never went there. So he was gone. We're talking like 8 hours, just gone. So they put me on an emergency flight. He was 8.
Oh, wow.
8 years old. Dude, what can I do? I'm in Baghdad, right? I'm completely powerless to do anything about this. So up to that point, the indirect fire, the going out the walls, doing the different stuff, it's just stuff, right? And something about that, boy, I think it put me in a different frame of mind because I was helpless. There was nothing I could do. There was no action I could take, no way I could influence it. It was what it was. So in that 8 hours, they got me emergency PCS or emergency orders to go out. They put me on the first flight they could get me out, and I went to I think it was Kuwait City, and it turns out it was a human remains flight. And so they asked me, "Are you okay with flying on a human remains flight?" And I'm like, "I got to get home to find my son." So whatever. So I get on this flight, and this is where I didn't realize up until that moment how much where I was located affected me. And what I mean by that is when I got on there and I saw all those caskets draped with the flag, I think I was in that point, mental space, really vulnerable. My son's gone, and I'm emotional, and I see these guys going home in a bad way. And it struck me then all those honor flights that came through, because we were a human remains collection point. We had mortuary affairs right there on Souther Air Base,
Right.
IOP, right? And there was so many times, because where I worked was right next to where the C-130s would come in and they'd load the caskets up. And I went numerous times out there and saluted the troops that were going home. And then when I was going home with that stuff, I just found out once I got on the airplane that they found my son. So I had relief, but it was still all just jumbled up. And that's what got me kind of messed up, quite frankly. Came home, and with that, getting off, man, I can't think about that without starting to get emotional. I get teared up. There was a while back, I think New York Times came and did an interview when I was doing Vets for Freedom. And out of nowhere, I'm talking about it, and I'm talking about the event. I just busted out crying, man. I mean, I'm not a crier. I just kind of hit because I had so much guilt, because here's these guys who gave it all. And I'm leaving early because I couldn't handle my family stuff. Is that an unreasonable way of thinking? Absolutely. Most reasonable people say, hey, something happened, your son, you got to go home and take care of him. Me, and I fought that guilt like I left early. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I could have done more. The guys were still there. And then that was exacerbated because right after that was some of the stuff that happened in Iraq, and that had nothing to do with that. I chose it was time for me to move on. I decided that the way weather was being done, some of the things that were happening just didn't fit. There was a situation that a couple of guys didn't come home because of some really stupid bureaucratic stuff that I wasn't in a position to do anything about. It was never addressed. And so people didn't make it home because of dumb stuff. And it was the way we did business. And I decided at that point, you got to lead what you believe. I had troops, I had folks, I was moving into leadership roles at that point. And I decided, I can't say this is the right way to do things because I don't believe it. And people got hurt and folks did not come home. And that's a huge thing. We go to war, everybody comes home. Right. We make sure that happens if at all possible. So I decided to get out, and right at that point, so I was 12 years in, man, I had chiefs chasing me down. Sergeant Bennett, why are you leaving? You're going to be a chief one day. What are you doing? I had my commander at the time, and he was like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, it's time to go. It's time to make this happen. And so I did. I went ahead and pulled it. And I can tell you, I don't know if you remember that Army commercial that was going on. They played in theaters and stuff. I think it was 2008, 2009. And it showed the airplane lands, and they got helicopters flying through the air, and there's a soldier of one. I hated the damn soldier of one.
The soldier one,
right?
Yeah.
But remember how he was running into combat? Like he was running towards the fight, and everyone's going towards it. And I'm sitting there, and I got so upset with myself. So I'm like, I just left everybody back in the field. I got out of the Air Force. I got out of the military. The fight's still going on. It's not finished. and I've left my brothers in arms. That's how I truly felt. And man, I dealt with so much just guilt over that. Even though I knew it was the right thing, I did the right reasons, it was well thought out. I couldn't stand that I just left people. And so I got real motivated to get involved in politics because of that. And that's how I got into Vets for Freedom and started fighting for other ways of supporting and kind of trying to help finish the fight, supporting the Up Armor Humvee funding, supporting the surge stuff, getting the message out there, because I started seeing people just not understanding what was really going on. And it was the most impactful period of time in my life. It affects me every day. Some ways I don't even understand sometimes, and I catch myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing it because of this, and it's hard to believe because it feels like sometimes a couple months ago that I was over there. I can recall the memories vividly, or like I had a piece of Alfal Palace, and sometimes I pick it up and smell it. You can smell the dust, and it was just like I was right there. There's sometimes I wake up in the morning, I can hear the helicopters on the airfield or the C-130s coming in because it was a constant movement, and our tents were right next to the airfield. Sounds will go off, like especially if something pops or booms and it's kind of in the distance, and it just immediately I'm looking like, hey, what's going on there? There was one night I lived in Central Florida. Space shuttle come in. Well, it was one of its last flights, and it broke the sound barrier as it was coming through because it was landing, right? So you hear boom, shakes all the windows, all this stuff. It's like probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I'm butt naked. I jump up, grab my pistol, and I clear the house. I think someone's breaking in. It's like things like that, just it responds differently. And that's but on the other side, I work hard. I think I have a good, strong ethic. I have so many qualities that have helped me in business and life, perseverance, learning how to deal with a lot of different people, caring about somebody who can be absolutely, completely opposite of you, different culture, different background. You have nothing in common, but then you get together and you get these common bonds and you start working towards the same things, and you're all fighting for the same stuff, and you become close. And it's hard to replace that. I've never found that anywhere but during my time in the service. And if I had to say I miss any one thing, it's that joint mission, in that knowing that dude, even though I might not know him that well, I know he's got my back. Right. That's the hard thing to replace.
Military folks apart, right? Besides just, there's a number of soft skills and things like that in work I do and getting help vets hired, even my own company, is that, it's about something bigger than themselves. You don't teach that or learn that in civilian space. You just don't, right? And that's just it. People, like you said, you can see somebody or know, or whether they're wearing something you recognize or that, or something, or just how they act. You're like, that guy had to be military or a cop or something, but usually military. It just, and again, I always tell people all the time, the U.S. they always talk, Pete Hegseth just came out about, calling the diversity as our strength is the dumbest thing ever said. And I got to agree with that because, but the reality is that there is not a more diverse organization. I've said it on our show many times, not a more diverse organization in the world than the U.S. military.
That's right.
Because they bring in someone from Central Florida, Topeka, Kansas, South Beach, Washington State, and put you all in a group, a squad, or whatever together. And you depend on each other. Your lives could depend on each other. You have to work together to accomplish some kind of goals or objective, whether it's that day in the motor pool, or it's for that 3 weeks in the field at some national training center, or in combat.
That's right.
And and you become more diverse because you learn about each other there. Because right, you're sitting on guard, you're doing something like that. You're
shooting the crap.
Stories from back home, and the life you brought. Someone grew up in Compton versus someone grew up in Queens. It's just there's nothing better than that, and so it cracks me up when I see all this stuff about, especially during the last administration, of trying to root out and racism, this and that, so whatever. It's like, dude, so many people in the military will lay their lives down for someone else, regardless of the kind of joke they tell or how they were raised or what kind of music they listen to.
I would agree with that. Now, I did see stuff, right, where there was definite racism. There was Fort Hood. Shoot, man, when I was there was huge gang problems. I lived in base housing or post housing, and just in my little cul-de-sac, there was 3 different gangs represented. Right before I got there, this sergeant major, she was a regional gang leader. And she called out a hit and had some people killed on the northern training range in Fort Hood, and they sent the federal marshals in to get her. She was using HEMTs going back and forth to run drugs from like Laredo.
Right.
So it was
Well,
like a
I mean,
full on, that was some wild stuff.
Yeah, there's no job that is puts anyone above the law.
Oh yeah.
Or make, I mean, from priests to soldiers to cops to, doesn't matter, teachers, right? People are people, they're fallible.
It was a microcosm of society,
Right.
It's a distillation, and it's mostly, and it's not, I think, disparaging to anybody in my opinion, but it's mostly the lower socioeconomic class, or the majority of the enlistees, not all of them, right? There's different people, a lot of middle class people go in. So you have all these different folks, all different backgrounds, and you start sharing and you see stuff, and you start understanding people's point of view a little differently. And what I like, and where I think the diversity is a strength, but because it brought us closer together, we became one unit, and we all worked the same regardless of our diversity. It was more about, how do we best support this mission? How do we best get this done? What are we going to do to protect each other? It's that kind of stuff, and that a commitment to each other individually and as our brothers and sisters in arms. That to me was the big strength. And I felt like probably one of the reasons I like the Army a little better than the Air Force, as far as like operating with and deploying with, doing that, I felt like it was more about that. Air Force, a lot of bureaucracy stuff when I was in. It was less combat focused and less combat oriented. It became more like that towards the end of my time because of the period of warfare we've had and how much deployment, the AEF cycles that were going on. It really did start kind of shifting, but it just never quite, because it's not the same. It's not the same footprint, not the same support style. I mean, it's just a different type of branch. And so I loved my joint service time. That was probably the most rewarding time in my 12 years that I was in. And it's what I wanted to do after Tyndall. If I'd have stayed in, I was positioning for either Camp Blanding in Florida to help with the Spec Ops training and stuff, and the combat weather folks training things. Camp Blanding's got a really neat setup, or had a neat setup there. Or I was going actually to Fort Riley, Kansas, because they were reestablishing a unit. They were moving it around, and I wanted to be there as part of that, kind of stand up the new unit to use the new technology and kind of go on with the career. I wanted to do the rest of my time with Army support because I loved the mission focus so much. And that was something that really drove me. It was
you said you deployed to Iraq in an Air Force position.
Yeah.
But you'd already had all the Army time. Did it help you? I mean, did you just talk to the Army guys different? Did it help you?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you're negotiating, you're wheeling and dealing when you're deployed, all that kind of stuff. I mean, were you kind of the guy that could talk Army speak?
Yeah, 100%.
So you're the guy that dropped F-bombs every other word, and it just
I was. I had to try to make sure I'd tone that down because my Army time had definitely given me a mild case of Tourette's. Speaking of which, we had this one guy. His name was Adam Raggett. I think he retired as a master sergeant. And this dude, I swear, had Tourette's, because he would come through and, man, he was like, well, this F in front's coming in here. And he always did his finger like this when he was pointing at the screen, showing the stuff. So he's basically flipping you off the whole time. And there was an F-bomb every other sentence. We're talking shift change. And he's dropping these F-bombs like it's glitter, and he's at a glitter party. So we're in Macedonia. We're supporting the Kosovo air campaign. And that was 15th Military Intelligence. That was some of the first, kind of UAVs. The Hunter UAVs had the push-pull system, motorcycle engines. They could carry about 160 pounds. I couldn't even ride on one. I mean, they were neat little aircraft, but we're out there doing support. Well, he's walking me around Camp Able Sentry, and it is an Army installation. And this dude is a veritable encyclopedia of all the buildings, what they do, the hours of operation, who works there. This guy's going through all stuff. He's like, oh yeah, this is this, and it's F and this and this, and the F-bomb here, that, and he's cussing like a complete string of profanity as he's doing this. And it's like an awe-inspiring level of knowledge. We walked by the chapel. He goes, that's the chaplain's tent. I don't know what the F goes on there. And he just kept on walking. Here's the coffee shop. It's open from this time to this time. Costs this much for a latte, but you don't drink that pussy shit. You need to drink the coffee. That's this guy. It's like
surprising he didn't know what happens in the chaplain's tent.
Yeah, surprising. Like, shocker. Oh, and you talk about culture. Quick story from Iraq. So my family, and you see in some of our text group stuff, I barbecue a lot. Well, that comes from my family. I grew up barbecuing. We didn't have money growing up, man. Dad and I were talking the other day about how we used to grill bologna on the back porch, because that's all we could really afford. We had bologna and hot dogs, called them Queenie Weenies. And he sat back there. We were called Queenie Weenies because we had a dog named Queenie. So she'd get a little piece of hot dog pitched to her every once in a while. And so we'd sit back there in Florida in the summertime. It's 90-some degrees outside, 90-some% humidity, sweating our butts off at this little old piece of shade from an awning. and he's drinking, Budweiser beer or Busch Lights, and we're cooking bologna on the damn grill. That was our thing. So we then, of course, he made more money. We kept getting more stuff, so we barbecued. So we had this thing called Bennett Brothers Barbecue Dust. And it's for my dad and his brothers. They come.
Oh, why am I losing you? Am I? Oh, there
We're
you
back.
are. Okay, you're
It might
back.
be
Yeah,
on my end.
that we
I
got.
got
Let's say
hurt.
Bennett Brothers Barbecue, and then I lost you.
Gotcha. So Bennett Brothers barbecue sauce, my dad's brothers, they put all this dust together, right? And we have these barbecue events. And so they sent me a care package over there because one night I had my Leatherman, I was bored. It was like, midnight, and I'm chipping away because there was all this rime ice in the freezer and like kind of the group little beverage cooler. So I'm just chipping away at it. And I started looking back there. I'm like, what is that? And I found like 50 lobster tails. It was crazy, like a bunch of frozen lobster tails randomly in a freezer. So at first I'm like, oh, those must be bad. So I keep chipping away and I pull them out. They look good. I started looking at them. There's nothing wrong with these lobster tails. So I took all that ice I chipped out and I shoved it back in the hole and hit the lobster tails back up. So then I went to my squadron commander and was like, hey, we hadn't had any morale and welfare stuff a little bit. What do you think about doing a barbecue? I'm going to do this, and I laid it out for him. So basically I went around to all of our unit members, got about $15 off of them. I went to the PX and ordered a whole bunch of ribeyes. So they had them frozen ribeyes that were individually packaged in the big PX at the main bases, the installations. Got a crap load of those. Got those lobster tails out. I had to sign up, and this is my first time dealing with Army DFAC. I had to sign all this safety stuff to get them to provide me coleslaw and potato salad and macaroni and cheese. Right? Like, we're talking
refrigerated and all that.
Yeah. They told me I had to wear the hat, so they gave me this little goofy like ice cream man hat, this paper thing with like a mesh deal. I had to wear that, and so I'm out there. We're under the flagpoles with the bullet holes and stuff in it from where they were strafing during the war. We've got the barbecue up. I've got half my squadron out there. I've got Bennett Brothers barbecue dust all over these steaks, and I got lobster. So we're doing steak and lobster in them Sather Air Base with potato salad, coleslaw, and mac and cheese, while I'm also getting presented NCO of the quarter with my stupid ice cream hat on. So I took that sucker and I cocked it off to the side so I looked real stupid. I have my spatula like this, and I have my NCO of the quarter packaged like that.
I feel like I've seen that picture. I feel like
I think
have
I
seen.
did that. Yeah.
Well, if anything got you NCO of the quarter, it was probably that. You may have been the predecessor to all these steak and lobster nights we had in Iraq and Afghanistan all through.
Might have been. Yeah.
I think Iraq was usually Saturday nights, and I want to say Afghanistan was usually Friday nights, right? It was steak, lobster, shrimp, all you could eat. That may have been, you may have set the bar.
It's possible. My commander was pretty happy, and we had a great event. Everybody was there. It was cool. It's like a little bit of normalcy and like just a sea of oddness, It's there were so many things that happened. It's hard to tell stories all the time unless you kind of have the beer and you're talking about it, because it's like someone will tell a story. Like I'll be sitting around with Jimbo and Wolf. We're sitting there. I get to visit with them sometimes, and they'll say something that reminds me of something that happened, and then vice versa. I love those visits with people, especially when I can hear the rest of the story from other folks and different experiences. I think it's great that you're doing this. I know mine's pretty damn vanilla compared to some of the other stuff.
No, but, are you kidding me? I'm thinking, I've just been listening through, it's our 9th episode. It's like, we've had some great, war fighting kind of work. There's actually not many of those stories. Most people have focused on other stuff, but yours, the different services, deploying jointly with Army and Air Force. I mean, going to places like Italy and the Bosnia stuff. I mean, not a lot of people have done that. I mean, this is, but I mean, so far, I mean, the flight home was probably, that's not something many people have experienced or shared, right?
It was tough, man. It still hits me today.
Yeah. To be smacked in the face with that surrealness. Because look, I know, you're downrange. You talked about it earlier, right? You're getting shot. It's like, whatever. It's just, that's what we're there for. None of us ever think about that, right? Most people, I don't think, really think it's like, hey, well, it's my time. It's my time, right?
Yeah.
The big voices going off. There's a rocket. Well, if I can hear it, I'm probably okay. It's the one you can't hear.
That's right.
And you kind of go through it. Hey, it's Xbox night. Oh, it's, whatever. Go get some, whatever movies from in the Ville and watch this. And you don't, what's going on, but you try to have a little normalcy. But then something like that, you can't avoid it as you fly home for multiple hours and you're looking at these boxes.
They're right there.
And you're thinking of all the family members and people that are waiting on that are dealing with the news they
Yep.
probably just got. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what this is all for. All that first world shit kind of goes away, right?
Yep.
It's
It
yeah,
brought it home, made it real. Like, and
yeah,
I've had friends that lost. I mean, I know most people that serve, especially Army folks in combat roles, lost a lot of people. Air Force lose nearly as many. And so, like one of the guys I served with in Korea, his name was Nathan Nylander. He was the captain that was the Air Force guy that got shot by the Iraqi, or excuse me, the Afghani. And it was, I can't remember which base, that doesn't matter. They were in there, they were in a secure environment. This guy's supposed to be cool and part of the good Afghanistan or Afghani guys. And he bust out and started shooting everybody. And so Nylander and another guy engaged him, and he was a captain, then he was a staff sergeant when I knew him, and he got shot and lost his life. And there's some other people that I know that had things happen to them, and it's tough. And doing that just, boy, it put a fine point on it. Like, this is real stuff. We're talking life and death for real, and you're seeing it right there. You just don't forget it.
right.
And it affected a lot of what I did after that, quite frankly. It was a huge motivator for getting involved politically and wanting to make a difference, because I was so driven to be somebody that was helping the folks that were still fighting, because I didn't want to just abandon my brothers and sisters who are still over there doing it. So.
Well, you teamed up with some great guys between Wolf and Bells and Jimbo and other folks.
Yeah.
And I know, I met you through all them, and they welcome you with open arms. And you're our token Air Force guy, but that's
I'm definitely a token.
you know how to work the smoker and the grill, and that's something I can definitely appreciate, because that's near.
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
That's good. But oh man, this was great. I appreciate you coming on. You told a lot. I know we went a lot longer than I told you we would. It seems to be a lot on these shows. It's just so easy to keep rolling. But is there anything else before we wrap up? I don't want to keep it too much. That any other story from any of your deployments, very unique ones at that, that you just want to let people know about? Just any incident or person or anything like that just really stands out as kind of you told some good ones already that I know you.
Well, that's hard. Like, people that stood out, because you know how it is when you have a longer career, and I planned on staying in the full 20 and probably even 30. I planned on from the get-go being a lifer. There were several folks and key NCOs at different times, and a few officers that really set the bar, right? Probably one of the biggest ones that I think it was when I really grew up, right? You're an adult, but when do you actually grow up the rest of the way?
Right.
And it was Fort Hood. There was a guy named Sergeant Baker, Master Sergeant Baker. And this guy, well, he was a hard ass. Like, you just look at him, he got that sour look on his face, and it's like, that dude's looking for something I did wrong. But what it was, and I learned this with working with him, he just expected you to perform up here. Okay, standards here, he wants you up here. And that's his standard. And you either meet it or you don't. And if you meet it, he's cool with you. If you don't, he's not. And I was working, it was my first night as a certified forecaster at Fort Hood. And Texas has a dry line out in West Texas that can fire up and create some stuff. And I had a pretty good read on that. What I didn't have a read on was some air mass thunderstorms. It was like 6 a.m, right before shift change, and all these little thunderstorms start popping up, right? First thing in the morning. I'm like, what is this? Had no clue they were coming. Completely whiffed the forecast. It was bad. And there was exercises and stuff going on up north. We had troop movements going up there, and small unit stuff were going and doing their deal. And we needed to put out the stuff for warning so they could, take appropriate measures.
Cowhouse Creek flooding there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It was actually flash floods, a big deal. We had to put those warnings out a lot. We lost a couple guys because of those. We as in Fort Hood, not the weather guys. We were in the base. But so he comes in, and immediately I can see, well, he's pissed. It looks like I got dog crap on my shoe. I walked in and tracked it in his house. And he just comes in and he takes charge. He's like, boom, 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 knock this out, do that, boom, boom, boom. He says, Airman Bennett, into my office. So he got everything settled down. We did shift change, got everything done. He pulls me in. He says, I'm going to be decertifying you today. I know it's your first shift, but you obviously don't have this. And I sat there and I took the hit, and I looked at him and I went, Sergeant Baker, this will never happen again. He says, well, what are you going to do about it, Airman Bennett? I said, I'm going to stay here until I learn this stuff today. And then I might sleep a couple hours, and then I'll be back learning it some more tonight. I'm going to make sure this is never an issue again. And he says, well, we'll see. And immediately I walked out of his office, did the thing, see you, sir, and no problem. I'm out. I stayed there. My shift ended about 8 o'clock, and I was there until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was studying SOPs. I was working with the assistant station chief, and I learned like, hey, what did I miss here? And I broke it down. The next night, or in that afternoon, I had to go into him and I had to show him my forecast reasoning for the next morning. He had to approve it. And so I did all this. I said, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what's going to happen. Here's why. Here's this and this and this. He says, all right, let's see how tonight goes. And he showed up in the morning. I gave the brief. I hit nailed my forecast. I had a slight adjustment in the morning, and I was on it. Everything was lined out. Finished up the morning brief, and all he did was go, "See you tomorrow." That was it. Wasn't good job. Wasn't a hey, you did the right thing. It was see you tomorrow, because I did my job, and that was it. I didn't exceed. I did the job, and it taught me that excellence should not be just given up. You don't lower the bar to make somebody feel better when you're talking about people's lives in the mix. And weather's weather, right? Most people are, it's raining outside or not. But when you have bad winds, you got lightning out there, you got troops that are marching. You got the Kevlar. That Kevlar, you can get hit with lightning, it'll kill you. It'll kill a whole squad. It takes out helicopters. You got multi-million-dollar Apache sitting out there, Blackhawks flying. They get popped with lightning, or they're trying to land and they get a gust that comes through, flips them over. You kill everybody on board. I mean, it's real impacts from getting this crap wrong when it comes to the bad weather. The rest of the time, it really ain't much to it. We're doing much admin work. But when the stuff's really happening, you got to be on point. And what he taught me was don't accept mediocrity. If I'm going to be good, be good. And I had to own it. And from that point on, my entire career changed. I was regularly airman or NCO of the quarter, or nominated at least. A lot of times I won. I was getting NCO of the year. I got it twice in Korea right after Fort Hood because of the work ethic and the standards that NCO instilled in me by not giving me an inch of leeway. He was going to pound my face to the ground, and I deserved it. Quite frankly, looking at it from being an NCO myself, I absolutely deserved that. And then I had my next NCO, same assignment. I had really two good ones back to back. This guy, he kind of took a different approach because I'd already learned and went through the crucible. He took and said, go do what you do. I trust you. Go get it done. And for the first time in my military time, I was empowered. And I figured out I can make stuff happen. I know how to wheel and deal. I can work with the Army counterparts. I can go and understand the project management here. I can get my FTO&E and fix their supply stuff. I can build my team and get them trained up so that we go out to the field and deploy. We're supporting our customer and making sure we're providing combat weather that enhances our combat effectiveness and our ability to bring people home and be more lethal out in the field. And seeing all that was the catalyst for like really taking me from just a person doing a job and being a professional military person who was effectively fighting to increase that lethality, increase our ability to bring the war to the enemy and bring people home. And I was part of a team then. It was totally different. And that's what set me up for where I'm at today, where I'm making good money. I've got a great job. I live in an amazing house that I never thought that I'd live in something like this when I was growing up. And I can attribute every single bit of that to my parents and my time in the military that set me up for being able to handle this kind of stuff and work the way I work and deal with people the way I deal with them. So yeah, it's a life-changing event. And I'm so glad I did it. And I would encourage anybody to take that opportunity and go after it and go experience some of the world. If you even do just a 2-year tour in the Army or the Marines, go do it. It'll change you. You spend more time, figure out, make a career out of this thing for you.
That it will. So many I've known in my career that came into 2, 3, 4 years and then just regretted it forever after they got out and wanted to come. Yep. I mean, we only remember the good stuff. I mean, human nature is to forget the bad memories, and you start talking through them. But we kind of always remember, man, I should have stayed in. So many people I know go, I'd be retiring right now. I'd be at 20 years. Yeah. But what would that last 14 years been like? Like, you don't even, it's easy to say that after the fact, right? A little hindsight, but timeline, you would be retiring now, but what would have taken you to get there? So awesome.
I would ask you, have you had those dreams about missing movement or formation after you got out, or like you were supposed to be as reporting to assignment? Do you ever have those kind of dreams or have that kind of thing?
Well, since I retired as a first sergeant and I spent, my last several years as a first sergeant, I was probably the one that people had nightmares about. But because my rule was first sergeant's never late because it ain't starting until I get there. But my commanders even knew that, and we're like, I'm not late. I'm here now, right? But yeah, I can't. I probably had some of those when I was more younger in rank. I'm sure when, especially if that alarm goes off. Look, I went through. I got honor grad in jump master school, and I almost did not make that because in jump master school there is no bending of the standard, and I almost missed a morning formation because of waking up late, and that was the fear I had then. And how fast I got up and dressed and all the way over to the air base because I was on the Army side. Yeah, I don't know how I got it there. Thank God I didn't get pulled over because I made it by the skin of my teeth, and that was something that was a fear I'll never forget. I think I was probably more scared there than my several different tours in combat. But yeah, I mean, I definitely had that happen, but I can't say I've since I retired that I've had much dreams about that. But probably I consider myself.
I have. It was when I got out.
Yeah,
It's been periodic over time. I had a dream once that I went back in. I was a tech sergeant again. And I'm like, all right, how much time I got? Like, I was literally in my dream calculating time in service and when. I mean, it was stupid. Like, really, I woke up like, what in the world was I dreaming about? It's such a weird thing. There was other times I dreamed about getting back in and being an officer, which again, that was the goal. It was get out, go to college, come back in. But yeah, it's permanent mark, and in a good way for the most part. And there definitely were the bad things.
yeah.
But kind of life lessons like you're just talking about. We had I learned not to drink before I go to work. In my first assignment, I went out. I had a swing shift and I had a day shift the next day, so it's kind of a quick turn. And I went to the local club, the NCO club, and some of the buddies were there, and where they started buying me Alabama Slammers. And next thing you know, I'm like 3 sheets to the wind. I'm blistered, as my dad would say. So I go to the dorms. I crash out. I wake up in the morning, only 5 or 4.5 short hours later, and I'm still drunk. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasn't so drunk that I couldn't realize I was drunk, but I was drunk enough. I'm like, I can't drive to work. So I quickly got ready, pressed my uniform, and I walked to work from the dorm. It was a pretty good little cruise. I get there. I try to stay away from everybody because I can tell I smell like alcohol. Yeah, I reek sweating it out because I mean it was bad. So I'm like, hey, I actually remember the guy's face like it was yesterday. I don't remember his name. And I'm like, hey, Sergeant, I'm going to head out to the Ross. He goes, okay, well, all right, take it easy, Aaron Bennett. And he kind of looked at me a little funny. I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm not hanging around to get caught. So we had to walk from the base weather station all the way across the runway and the ramp. It was probably about a half-mile minimum from the base weather station to the remote observation site. So as I start walking out, here comes the base commander driving by because there was a DV flight taking off. So I pop the salute, good to go. I'm just walking out to the Ross. He goes by me, does the loop, comes back to me. I'm like, oh, shit. Then he comes up, stops, leans over, rolls the window down. He says, hey, Airman, where are you going? I said, oh, hey, good morning, sir. I'm just going to the remote observation site right there. I'm just walking out there. He says, well, come on, I'll give you a ride. Oh, no, sir, I'm good to go. I like to walk. He says, Aaron Bennett, get in the car. Yes, sir. I get in this car and I'm trying to look this way as I'm talking to him. He's on the left. I don't want him to smell me. I know I reek.
Of all the times.
All the time. Absolutely. I'd never seen this guy. And man, I was always squared away. Uniform sharp, press, starch. Man, I took pride in my stuff. I wanted to make sure I always looked good. The one day, man, I'm messed up. My uniform looked good, but I didn't look good. And he said, you're talking to me. He talks to me about this DV that's leaving. He says, yeah, I got to come out and do these DV flights. Basically, I have to salute them when they take off and leave, but they can't see me. It's kind of silly. But that's what I got to do. And I'm like, it's kind of a weird conversation with an airman from a colonel. He says, yeah, we do a lot of stuff. Where are you going again? Right over here. And he's just kind of chatting away. And then he pulls up, drops me off, and he says, Aaron Bennett, hope you have a great day, and I hope you feel better soon. I'm like,
he had your number the whole time.
Oh, he did. And I was sitting there, man, I was sweating. This dude was sweating me out. And so I saluted him. Thank you, sir. Never did it again. Ever. If I had duty the next day,
you were given a second chance right there.
Ooh, boy, and that was the second year of career of being in. That was not a good situation. So
Well,
yeah, I learned some valuable lessons by being a dumbass. So
I can tell you weren't in with the Army long enough, because you would have showing up not just hungover but still totally hammered at PT is kind of a rite of passage,
well,
especially
I might have done that in Korea.
especially in Korea. When I spent my year in Korea, at least half my PT formations, yeah, I probably still would have blown over what a legal limit would have been. And when you puked, you weren't puking because of the hardness of the run. You were just getting the excess alcohol out of your
Yeah,
body.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We had Dart League on Wednesday. So I was at Yongsan Army Base in Seoul.
Yeah.
And so we'd go down to Itaewon on Wednesday nights. We had a whole dart league. There was several hundred of us that were playing. I think it was like 500 something people from the military and local community were in that dart league. So we'd go out, and sometimes we'd have some good nights. PT was 6 a.m. on Thursday, and I was the PT leader. Yeah, there was some struggle bus days, but I never let it show. That was another thing. It taught me
Never let it show. Never let it go.
Yeah.
When I was jump master in aircraft, they would be doing nap of the earth and people would be hurling, and I'd be sitting back there eating a ham sandwich, and they'd be like, they had no idea. I had a half a pack of Dramamine in me, because I was not going to, as another rule, jump masters never puke. And I would sit back there and eat and sit there, and I'm just watching people filling bags. And they would just, some of my soldiers would ask me, "How did you not puke, Sergeant Stewart?" I'm like, "Because I'm a jump master." Rah. You know, literally, I have a Sam's Club cart of Dramamine in my basement of my house, because I'm just eating it like nonstop. But yeah, never let it show. That's it.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I'll let you go. We've been going over an hour. It's been great, man. We'll want to get you back on. I know we haven't chatted a long time, and when we have, it's always been a big group of us, and we have never really got a chance to talk a lot one-on-one. But hang fast after this. But thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I hope you like Loud and Clear, this episode 9 with Will Bennett, and be sure and keep tuning in on Thursday nights for a regular Stu and the Nun show. But always check back here on Tuesday nights for the next episode of Lima Charlie. So with that, we'll bid everyone a good night, and Will, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks a lot.